I'm Catherine, 39 years old. I'm a full-time housewife and a mother of one child. I live with my husband, Bob, and our 5-year-old daughter now. I'm the middle child of 3 siblings. I have an older brother and a younger brother, but we're not that close. Maybe being the middle child is a bit isolating. Despite the gender difference, my brothers get along really well. Ever since we were kids, they were always playing in the mountains together, but I wasn't allowed to join in just because I was a girl. My older brother is 3 years older than me, and my younger brother is 2 years younger than me. Even though my brothers are about 5 years apart, they seem to get along, and I heard they live together since they became adults. Since I got married 10 years ago, I've been out of touch with my family, and I don't know what my brothers are up to. I've always felt alienated and lonely. I loved both of my brothers, so it was hard not being able to play with them. So, I decided if I ever had kids, I would only have up to 2. In the end, it seemed like I wasn't meant to be a mother, but finally, my daughter was born 5 years ago, and because of my age, I gave up on a second child. Now, I'm very close with Bob and my daughter, and I'm living a peaceful, everyday life. As for my brothers, I've stopped thinking about them in my daily life. Even if I heard they're still unmarried, I wasn't interested. Then, one day, my older brother got engaged. Her name is Marilyn, and she was his classmate when he was in elementary and middle school. I also went to my parents' house to say hello, leaving my daughter in Bob's care. As I entered the house, my parents were making a big fuss. They were preparing coffee and sweets, cleaning up the house, all because my brother was bringing Marilyn over, and they didn't want any slip-ups. I was roped into helping as well. My brother was over 40 and still couldn't get married, so my parents seemed to have been worrying all this time. My younger brother, who arrived before me, was complaining that he's the only single one left, but when my older brother entered the house with Marilyn, everyone celebrated grandly. I looked at the scene with somewhat cold eyes. It felt like something happening in a distant country that had nothing to do with me, and I couldn't sincerely celebrate. "All the best to you, Mike and Marilyn." That was all I could manage, and I'm not even sure if I managed a convincing smile. As I was preparing the coffee, Marilyn came into the kitchen and asked if she could help. I declined with a smile. "You're our guest, please have a seat." "But you know, Catherine, time is cruel, isn't it? You, who used to be so small, are now a lady of the house." Marilyn smirked at me, as if she was plotting something unpleasant. "What do you mean?" "Oh, it's nothing. Just that I've never thought you, whom Mike always said was so cute, were cute since you were small." Mike is my brother's name. I was a bit stuck for a response, so I just nodded in agreement. "Is that so?" Marilyn said just that and then returned to the living room where everyone was. I don't know what she wanted to say, but I don't plan on getting along with my brother and his wife. Even if Marilyn dislikes me, I think it doesn't matter. About a month after that gathering, my mother said, "Come home for this year's reunion." I haven't seen Bob and my granddaughter in a while, so our family of 3 went to my parents' house. At first, my mother prepared coffee, Bob and my daughter greeted Marilyn, my father and brother lifted my daughter up high, and my younger brother patted her on the head, so my daughter was overjoyed. Marilyn also spoke to my daughter with a smile. Relieved by such a scene, I stood up to prepare for everyone's drink refills. While making coffee in the kitchen, Marilyn came by again. "Catherine, I don't want to see your face at our family gatherings. As a wife, you should be going to your husband's family gatherings." "Don't worry. I hardly have anything to do with this house. Even today, I was only called over by my mother." "Then, please don't come over even if my MIL calls you." I don't understand why Marilyn hates me so much, but I'm not interested in the woman who is going to be my brother's wife. They say the opposite of love is indifference, and this is exactly it. Whether I'm disliked or not, I didn't care. I've been treated like an unwanted person by my brothers, and my heart was worn out. I met Bob, gave birth to our daughter, and started to feel happy, but Marilyn probably doesn't understand my cold feelings. If you hate me, please don't talk to me. As I retorted that, Marilyn glaringly looked at me and returned to the living room. Since my brother's marriage, my mother started calling me home more often to unite the family, but I hadn't gone since the incident with Marilyn. I decided to keep out of it, thinking that as long as Marilyn doesn't make my brother unhappy, it didn't matter how she treated me. My brother got married in his 40s, and I didn't want to rain on his parade. We didn't meet frequently, and I thought it was okay to endure it when we occasionally met. I also told Bob about this. "Do you really want to become family with someone who hurts you?" Bob said, siding with me. "It's okay. I wasn't close with my brother, but I still want him to be happy as a sibling. If it ends with just me bearing it, then it's okay." Bob didn't seem convinced, but I was somewhat happy that he got angry for me. However, a call came to my phone after a while. It was from an unknown number, so I answered it suspiciously, and the caller was Marilyn. "Oh, Catherine. How have you been?" "Marilyn. Do you need something?" Mike is so simple. "When I said I wanted to be friends with you, he immediately gave me your number." "Is that so?" I had no idea why Marilyn would call me. "Do you keep in touch with Mike?" I answered while pretending to be calm, although I was flustered. No, I'm not." "Are you lying?" "I'm not lying. Even if I badmouth you, no one believes me." "How annoying are you?" Did I do something to you, Marilyn?" "It's the worst to not realize it. Anyway, you've married, so stay out of this. Oh, and don't say I said this. If you do, I'll send some scary people I know to your house." I immediately hung up the phone, feeling chilled by Marilyn's words. "What was that?" I was unsure whether to tell my brother that he should call off the marriage with Marilyn, or to consult my parents first. Anyway, I was scared and my heart was pounding. At that moment, a hand was placed on my shoulder, and I was startled and my body shook. What happened?" When I turned around, Bob was staring at me with a worried look. "You're as pale as a ghost." When he said that, I realized for the first time that my fingertips were cold. It was a fear so intense that I could feel my blood running cold. Well, actually. When I told Bob about what just happened, he became visibly angry. "What the hell is that? For now, just block the number. And let's report this to your parents or brother immediately. There's no way he can be happy marrying that person." But maybe she's a good person in front of my brother. I just need to stay out of it, I'm sure. "Do you think that's the end of it? That woman threatened you, didn't she? She's not a decent person. If your Mike knew what she did to you, I'm sure." Bob's words made me angry. "I get it. But why do I have to do something about it? I've been keeping my distance from my brother and younger brother for a long time now. If our 3-person household can stay intact, isn't that enough? Is that not okay?" I was usually able to think calmly. But remembering how my brothers would exclude me and play without me, as if I never existed, as if it was always just the two of them, caused all my past anger to explode. I knew that Bob wasn't the one I should be lashing out at. Suddenly realizing that, I apologized to Bob. "I'm sorry, you've done nothing wrong." Then Bob hugged me tightly. "You've been holding back a lot, haven't you? I'm on your side no matter what, Catherine." You can vent your feelings to me. But I think you should talk with your brothers." Hearing Bob say that, I felt a sense of relief in my heart. Perhaps because I felt a little more at ease, I decided to contact my brothers and arrange for a conversation just between the three of us. As it was quite late that day, I thought I would call them around noon the next day. However, I never ended up making that call to my brothers. I received a phone call from my mother. My brothers in Maryland had been in an accident. Apparently, my brothers in Maryland had been on a trip together for the past 2 days, and on the way back, they had been in a collision with a truck. I rushed to the hospital in a panic. Marilyn had only suffered minor injuries, but my brothers were seriously injured. By the time I arrived, the surgery had somehow finished, and my brothers seemed to have made it through. They were transferred to the ICU, and I was only allowed a short visit. I kept my distance because of the situation with Marilyn. But my mother, worrying about Marilyn, asked, "It must be hard for you to go home alone, Marilyn. You don't need to worry about anything at home. Why don't you stay with us for a while?" But Marilyn, with an unhappy look on her face, said, "No, thank you. I'll go home to my parents' house." "In that case, I'll drive you home." "No, I'm fine." And with that, she quickly left the hospital. She must be upset. Poor thing. At least she's safe at her parents' house. Surely Marilyn was also shaken by the accident and was probably scared. However, after that, Marilyn never came to visit the hospital, and my parents and I visited frequently. At first, my brothers were in pain and couldn't move at all, but as time went on, they slowly began to get better. My brother's marriage to Marilyn was still in the consultation stage with the wedding hall, and the formal contract was yet to be made. Unable to reach Marilyn, my mother contacted the venue on my brother's behalf and explained the situation. Unable to discuss things such as reconciling with my brothers and the contents of Marilyn's phone call, I visited the hospital many times. Although they couldn't move, they gave me a gentle smile when they saw me. About 2 months after they were admitted, I went to visit them alone and was about to open the door. I could hear my mom, my older brother, and my younger brother chatting inside. "But well, if something happened to me, I made sure the insurance money would go to Catherine. If Catherine is happy, then I'm content." Truly, I feel bad for Marilyn, but it was good we didn't invite Catherine. Marilyn seems uncomfortable around my sister. If it wasn't the case, we would have invited the whole family. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. They were always together, always treating me like an outsider. "That kid, when she was small, she used to imitate me and got injured. I am a man after all, so I've done dangerous things, but I can't let Catherine get hurt again. Plus, our sister, she's so serious all the time. It's hard to depend on someone who tries so hard." At this, Mom laughed with disbelief. "You've thought that much about Catherine." "That's not all. We both bowed our heads to Bob and pleaded with him to take care of Catherine." Those were the days. I remember how surprised Bob was. "It seems like he's taking good care of her just like he promised." Everyone was laughing and chatting about this. But I couldn't join in. Tears were streaming down my face. I couldn't lift my head. How much had I been unaware of my surroundings? There were so many people who cared for me, yet I thought I was always the odd one out. At that moment, I decided to backtrack the way I came. And I went to Marilyn's parents' house. When I rang the doorbell and introduced myself, a very disgruntled Marilyn appeared. "Could you please go visit my brother in the hospital? I heard you haven't visited him even once since the accident." Somehow, I managed to bow my head deeply as I asked her. But Marilyn flatly refused me. "You think I'm going to marry a man in that state? I told you a lot of things, but it doesn't matter anymore. I plan to discuss breaking off our engagement once everything has settled down. I'm glad we didn't get married. Marilyn, didn't you get engaged to my brother because you love him? Don't be silly. I work in insurance sales and I approached him because I knew he had a high insurance policy. His salary seemed high too. But it was a misunderstanding. That man, he put you as the insurance beneficiary. Usually, you change the beneficiary to your spouse once you're engaged. When I convinced him of that, he said he'd change it to my name after we were officially married. I don't need a man with such injuries. So you were telling me to stay away from home, so my brother and I wouldn't meet? Yes. If he cared that much for his sister, I thought it would be a nuisance. But I won't say those things anymore, so don't worry. The accident completely killed my love for him. And the fact that I got injured too is the worst. The accident is partly your brother's fault, so he should compensate me for the emotional damage. Emotional damage! The one at fault for the accident was the other party. Shouldn't you be demanding from him? Of course, I've demanded from him as well. But if he hadn't invited me on the trip, I wouldn't have been in the accident. He should compensate for that. Marilyn's comments ignited a furious anger within me. But I took a deep breath to calm myself down. If you consult a lawyer, you'll find that your demands won't go through. You don't know that. I do. But more importantly, about my smartphone. What? I don't care about your smartphone. I see. It's a bother to take notes, so my phone automatically records all phone calls. Like the threats you made. What would happen if I reported it to the police, I wonder? When I said that and chuckled, Marilyn shouted in anger. You! What the hell are you thinking? Recording is wiretapping. Wiretapping? What kind of crime is that? You're recording people's conversations without permission. There must be some crime. Just then, Marilyn's mother, who had arrived at the front door, yelled at me. How dare you record your conversation without permission? Hand over your phone, now. Marilyn also glared at me with a disgusted look on her face. I shouldn't have gotten involved with him. It's a relief not to be part of a family with a woman like you. I responded to the two of them with a smile. I'm glad, too, that you wish to break off the engagement. I wouldn't want a person with such a bad character around my brother. I said just that and left Marilyn's family home as if I was running away. After that, I immediately headed to the hospital room where my brother and younger brother were. Both of you. What I'm about to tell you might shock you. But I want you to know, so I won't hide it anymore. I let them hear the contents of the phone call I received from Marilyn. Just by that, both my elder and younger brothers were surprised and their eyes widened. I also started the voice recorder on my smartphone when I went to meet them earlier, and recorded the conversation. When they heard it, my elder brother was infuriated first. That woman. So, that's why she didn't come to visit. And the horrible things she did to Catherine. Unforgivable. Even though my elder brother's leg was still healing from a complicated fracture, he started trying to get out of bed, so I hurriedly stopped him. Stop it! I didn't let you hear this because I wanted you to get angry. I just want you to give up on marrying Marilyn. Then my younger brother spoke up. I can't forgive her either. But sis, why did you go to such lengths for us? Today, I actually came to this room once. But you guys were talking with Mom, so I couldn't enter. Actually, I overheard you two talking about me, Sorry for eavesdropping." When I apologized, the two of them shook their heads together. "So that's what it was. We're sorry for being distant. Since we took a cold attitude when you wanted to explore the mountains with us as kids, we didn't know how to interact with you after that. But the truth is, both of us always cared about you." Relieved by my elder brother's words, I broke into a smile. "Thank you. I'm an adult now. I don't only need to be protected. I can protect you guys too." After that, my brothers, though they still had some scars, fully recovered and were discharged. Later on, my elder brother announced the termination of his engagement with Marilyn. Even though Marilyn unrepentantly demanded compensation, he refused, saying it was not justified for him to pay. Naturally, hiring a lawyer wouldn't result in any compensation being paid out. It seems Marilyn thought that her marriage to my brother was her last shot at happiness. However, she seemed to have misunderstood that if she claimed damages for the accident, she would receive a large amount of compensation, which is why she was so aggressive. Then my brothers told Marilyn's mutual friends about the awful things she had done to me. They even sent recordings of her threatening me. It seems this was far more painful for her than being reported to the police. I heard that Marilyn is now isolated, shunned by everyone around her. Since then, I've returned to my normal life. My heart is more at peace than before. I've become closer with my brothers, and we even go out for drinks together. It's as if we're trying to make up for the time we spent keeping our distance. Both my brothers have grown closer with Bob, and my daughter has warmed up to them as well. 2 years later, by some miracle, both of my brothers found their future spouses. My older brother is already preparing for his wedding, while my younger brother seems to want to continue dating for a while longer. Of course, there's no one threatening me, and we're on good terms with their parents. I hope we can continue to have this good relationship as in-laws. I think to myself, my name is Anne. At 26 years old, I just got married 6 months ago. John, my husband, is 30 years old and he works as an office worker. The story I'm about to tell happened when John unilaterally decided to have his younger sister, Molly, live in our brand new house. It's a house worth $45,000 built for the two of us, newlyweds. Ever since our engagement, John and I had been discussing on the layout of the house and choosing the furniture, planning to move in immediately after the wedding. When John's stuff was carried in, I was surprised by the sheer volume of it. I said to him, "John, would it fit in your space in the house? Don't you think you got a bit too much?" John nonchalantly replied, "Huh? Didn't I mention? Molly is moving in with us." I was taken aback. "Molly is moving in with us? Why? We're newlyweds." I challenged John, but he responded, "What's the big deal? Molly is family to you too, and there's no problem with us living together. She wants to live in the new house." I protested. "Without even a discussion?" John, however, ignored it and continued unpacking his stuff. He eventually started shouting at me, "If you don't like it, you can leave. I already decided to have Molly, so quit your complaints." Clearly, I was not at all convinced and told him I'd call my brother. Fearing my brother, John quickly changed his tune. "Wait! Don't call him. Molly isn't going to stay here forever. She just needs a place until she finds a job and a house. Can you please understand?" I reluctantly agreed to this. When I suggested, "Hey, Molly can use the guest room, right?" John made a dubious face and mumbled, yeah." Though he didn't seem convinced, I moved Molly's stuff into the room intended for guests. After a hectic day of unpacking, we had completed more than half of it. We were having a toast to celebrate our move when the doorbell rang. It was already past 9 p.m., so I thought of ignoring it, but John hurriedly went to the front door, unlocked it and let the visitor in. I was shocked as I was already dressed for bed. As I hid in the kitchen, John called me out. "Hey Anne, Molly's here." Annoyed, I returned from the kitchen to the living room. "Welcome, Molly. What brings you here so late? I said, trying to hide my irritation. Molly retorted. Can't I come home whenever I want? Now, where's my spacious room? Show me around, big bro, she said, and John led her to the guest room. Soon, I heard Molly protesting. This isn't it. You said it's a larger room, didn't you? She flung open doors, looking around for another room on the second floor. Here it is. This is the room for me, right, big bro? I had a bad feeling about this, and when I went upstairs, Molly was claiming my workroom as hers. I couldn't help raising my voice. This is my workroom, so it can't be your room, John suggested. Why not? Let's make this Molly's room. But I kept insisting. No way. Then I suggested. How about the room next to it? His workroom is also quite large. I pointed to the room intended to be John's workroom for his hobby. But he panicked. Not that room. I've been looking forward to use it. I chose the wallpaper and everything. No way. So, the only option left was the future children's room, which was currently being used as a guest room. Molly, still unsatisfied, snapped. And you're quite insolent, aren't you? Not listening to the head of the household. Quite cheeky for a freeloader who depends on him for meals. I lost all my energy to argue back, thinking, who's the real freeloader here? While I was heading back to the living room, I heard Molly asking, Hey, big bro. Do we have anything to eat? I'm hungry. I ignored her and continued with my solo celebration of our move in the living room. They seemed to be having an argument, but I didn't care until John came over and said, You're always going against me, and drinking all high and mighty. He took the wine bottle and gulped it down. And then he shouted, If you can't listen to me, get out. I'm the head of the household. Don't underestimate me. And he left with Molly. Despite the late hour, I decided to call my brother and tell him about Molly. He picked up the phone on the first ring as if he was waiting for it. However, I could tell from his voice that he was angry. I said, Are you mad, bro? Were you sleeping? I'm sorry. It turned out I'd called him in the middle of an argument with his wife. What's up? Did the move go smoothly? Sorry, I couldn't help. It's done. Don't you have to talk to your wife? Is it okay to leave her like this? When I asked, my brother John replied tiredly. It's over for us. Worried, I suggested that I'd come to his place. But he said he'd rather be left alone for now. I began to tell him about Molly, how she had started living with us from the first day of our married life, and how she didn't like to use the guest room. I even told him that my husband and Molly had been calling me bratty and telling me to do as I was told. He was worried I was being treated like a servant by my husband and Molly. But I laughed off his concerns. I'm your sister, right? Me, a servant? If they can manage it, let them try. I retorted, to which my brother laughed and said, Good point, but call me if anything happens. We then shifted our topic to the problems between my brother and his wife. What I heard left me flabbergasted. Apparently, his wife had been seeing men from a dating site and was in an affair. He'd found out because she had accidentally sent him a message meant for her lover. John had been suspecting her infidelity for some time, and once he got confirmation, he took her phone away and sent her back to her parents. He's planning to visit her parents' home tomorrow for a discussion. We ended the call, agreeing that both of us are in a terrible situation, and deciding to catch up over the phone again soon. While tidying up the remaining boxes, I waited for my husband and Molly to come home. They returned late at night, cheerfully drunk. As I continued unpacking instead of welcoming them, they approached me. And Molly and I have thought of a great idea. Let's make our bedroom Molly's room. We can each sleep in our workrooms. What do you think? Good idea, right? Make sure to clear the room for Molly by tomorrow, I replied. There's something I want to make clear. And ask them. There's something I want to make clear. And ask them. How much will Molly contribute towards the groceries and household supplies each month? And I heard she's not planning on living here forever, so how long is she planning to stay? My husband started to panic at my question. What? You want to get money from jobless Molly? I'll pay from my salary, so there's no problem, right? And Molly added, how long will I stay? Until I'm satisfied. My mom's cooking is all old-fashioned and I don't like it. Plus, she's annoying at home, always nagging me to do laundry and cleaning. Here, I can do whatever I want without spending a dime. It's the best. If you don't like it, Anne, why don't you move out? I snapped. Then let's split the household expenses. I will work to cover my share. Feel free to use your salary for yourself and Molly. I told them. For some reason, they seemed pleased with this. Even though I added, you will need to take care of your own chores. It seemed like they weren't really listening, so I made sure to leave a written note about it. The next day, I was worried about my brother and decided to visit his workplace. He is the president of a construction company, taking it over after our father passed away from an illness last year. When I arrived at his office, he was surprised to see me. When I asked, what's up? He said, I'll listen to what you want to say first. So I asked him for a favor. I explained what had happened the night before and asked him if he could hire me at his company. He agreed, saying, our secretary is quitting due to her husband's relocation, so it's a good timing. Then I heard about his situation. I was so shocked that my heart almost stopped. His wife was pregnant, but there was no doubt that the child was not his. The text messages on the phone he'd taken from his wife showed conversations, photos, and videos with her lover. The messages indicated that the man was trying to escape responsibility after learning about the pregnancy. When I asked my brother if he was going to divorce his wife, he replied, it'll be hard for the kids, but divorce is the only option. So, I suggested that he involve a lawyer and have a proper discussion. And I went home. In my room. I kept thinking of the texts and pictures of my sister-in-law's affair that my brother showed me. I couldn't get them out of my mind. The sister-in-law that I knew was a loving, family-oriented person, and I loved her for it. However, she had been betraying my brother. I felt as if I lost a dear friend, and tears welled up in my eyes. Despite all that, Molly has been knocking on my door again and again since a while ago. Hey! I'm hungry. Can you make something? She hollers from the other side of the door. But the shock I got was too much, and I didn't even have the energy to argue with Molly, so I left her alone. Then I got a call from my husband who should be at work. I didn't answer because I knew what he would want to talk about. I didn't want to talk to anyone, but then I received a text message from my brother. He was asking if I could accompany him to see a lawyer on the next day. I sent an okay sticker. I must have fallen asleep. My husband's shouting woke me up. You didn't even prepare food for Molly, and you're sleeping? What's that about? He roared, to which I silently produced a pledge and pointed to it for him to read. My husband then told Molly, let's let her sleep today, she seems to be off. We can scold her once she's feeling better tomorrow. I'm not sick, I'm just tired of you guys. Mumbling, I fell back to sleep. The following morning, without waking my husband, I headed to my brother's. My brother, it seemed, hadn't been able to sleep at all at home and his eyes were bloodshot. I prepared and served breakfast for the children before taking them to kindergarten. In the car, which I was driving, the children said, Mommy and Daddy had a fight and Mommy left the house. Mommy was the bad one. She left us at home and went out. We cried because we were left alone, so Daddy got angry. The children thought that maybe it was better not to have their mother around because she easily got angry. I told them, I see. If you're lonely, call Auntie, okay? To which they responded, yay! We might get lonely today, hee hee. I couldn't tell for sure, but I got the impression that they didn't seem sad even though their mother wasn't there. After dropping the children off at kindergarten, I headed to the law office with my brother. The lawyer told us that there was ample evidence from pictures and videos on the sister-in-law's smartphone, line messages, and recorded conversations between the sister-in-law and my brother. My brother's main contention was to divorce and retain parental rights. After my brother finished his story, I had a chance to share about my situation with my husband, got some advice, and was dropped off at home by my brother. My brother was going to gather the rest of the family today and inform them about the divorce. If anything happens, give us a call. We are all gonna be there. With these somewhat prophetic words, my brother left. When I entered the living room, the house was a mess. I guess they tried to make breakfast first. The kitchen area was greasy, and dishes were left on the table. I was exasperated by the sight. I hesitated to clean up the kitchen and cooking utensils that I also use, when Molly appeared.
Where did you go without even making breakfast? John didn't eat anything and went to work. Isn't it unacceptable to abandon household chores as a wife?
She confronted me, to which I responded,
You know what? I'm not your maid or servant. Weren't you taught to clean up after yourself since you were a child?
ignoring her repetitive.
But you're the wife.
I headed to my room. Then, my belongings were gone and Molly's stuff had invaded my room. I returned to the living room and questioned Molly.
Did you enter my room? Your stuff is in there. What's going on?
Upon asking this, she said,
Oh, I've loved your room since I first saw it. It fits my neat and cute image perfectly, don't you think? I've moved your stuff into the guest room.
Hearing this, I rushed to the guest room. When I got there, my computer and belongings had been haphazardly thrown in. I felt anger sparking. It was way beyond what I could tolerate. At that moment, I felt a strong desire for revenge. I will never forgive this girl. I decided I would wait for my husband, John, to come home, show him the terrible state of our house, and then ask him,
Do you still want to live here with Molly?
And I prepared for all the possible outcomes. John, who seemed to have gotten a call from Molly, came home earlier than usual. Then I heard his loud footsteps approaching the guest room where I was. Seeing him come straight to the guest room, I was convinced he already knew Molly had taken over my room, and he wouldn't be on my side. When he opened the door and stepped in, looking like a madman, Molly was right beside him, a thin smile on her face.
You apparently went against Molly. You're the one at fault here, not even making breakfast. Aren't you my wife? Isn't it your job to take care of me? Molly is your sister-in-law. You should be taking care of her and put up with her.
I thought, so this is how it's going to be. At that moment, I felt every shred of love I had for my husband disappear. He hadn't said one word to defend me, no mention of Molly being in the wrong, or asking her to leave, or having her do household chores, or giving me my room back. I told him,
If you're going to let Molly live here, I'm going to invite my brother over. He's never seen our house before, maybe I should call him over now.
Despite his usual fear of my brother, in front of his sister Molly, John acted quite bold.
Are you sure about that? If you let that thug into our house, I'll kick you out.
With a confident look, he threatened me, so I told him,
Kick me out? Try if you can. I'll call my mother and brother, and his wife, and have them see the house. Thinking that I was going to beg and cry at his threat of kicking me out. He retorted, Do not dare call your family. If you don't like it, then leave.
Then Molly chimed in.
This is my castle with John, you know? You have no right to call anyone here. Even if your family comes, we'll just kick them out.
In response, I picked up my phone and said,
I'll call my brother then.
To John and Molly. We should live together without you and your family. We can invite our friends over and party without worrying about anything. As Molly said this, they both seemed excited about the prospect of me leaving, with John chiming in.
That sounds fun, maybe we should just get divorced already.
I was getting increasingly irritated, so I decided to call my family over right at this moment when John and Molly were still high-spirited. They were overjoyed thinking about the freedom they'd have without me, and their minds were filled with the thought of kicking me out. So, I said,
All right. But you'll regret this. I'm calling my family now.
I called my brother and told my family to come as soon as they can. My brother responded, We've been waiting for this. We're on our way. I figured he must have sensed that I would call him, and I was moved by his foresight. My family arrived within about 30 minutes. Molly, who had threatened to kick out my family when they arrived, turned pale upon seeing my brother.
Oh, Molly, I thought you were going to kick out my family when they arrived.
At this, Molly could only shake her head at me. Seeing that, her husband John also shrunk in fear after witnessing his ally, Molly, become scared. My brother has been practicing judo since he was a kid, and until he injured his knee in college, he had been a regular at national competitions, was a big guy, standing at 6 feet and over, and his intimidating appearance was emphasized by his buzz cut. He's now a coach for a local boys' club. My younger brother is the same, also practicing judo, and he looks just like his elder brother. Molly seems to have forgotten that she saw them at the wedding ceremony. Even though they are brothers are quite memorable.
Huh? We're getting kicked out? By who? Isn't it you guys who are leaving?
Laughed my elder brother, to which Molly, gathering her courage, retorted.
Yeah, my brother is divorcing his useless wife. Now, please leave,
she demanded, then my younger brother retorted.
What? You guys are the ones leaving, aren't you? This is Anne's house, isn't it? Built with her share of our father's inheritance, in Anne's name.
My mother went into the kitchen, tidying up as she remarked.
Oh dear, what a mess.
Then she called out.
Don't drag out the conversation, get to the point already.
So the brothers obediently replied.
Okay.
Then turned to me, instructing.
There's another person coming, let the person in when arrives.
While gesturing for John and Molly to sit down.
We have 2 matters to discuss today. The first is that we need you to leave,
he told my husband and Molly. When Molly asked,
Brother, is it true that this is Anne's house?
John responded.
Well, I was talking to the contractors about the interior and stuff, so I thought it was my house, but maybe it's not. But I'm the head of the household, right?
Apparently, he thought it was his house because he had become the head of the household, without even considering where the money came from.
Huh? You know that being the head of the household and being the owner of the house are 2 different things, right?
Was the response to John, who fell silent. But Molly retorted.
I won't leave. Do you know about residency rights? I have the right, so I won't leave. If you don't want us here, you leave.
Glaring at me.
You seem to have researched this thoroughly, but this isn't a rental property. You're not paying in any rent, are you? So the residency rights don't apply here, haha.
When told this, it was John who began to resist this time.
But I'm married to Anne, right? I can't leave. I won't separate.
Just then, the doorbell rang. The guest the brothers had mentioned had probably arrived. When I opened the front door, my sister-in-law, my elder brother's wife, stood there crying. Before letting her into the house, I asked my brother.
Your wife is here with your kids. What should we do with them?
And my mother suggested she would take the kids to a room upstairs. After showing my mother to the room, I let my sister-in-law into the house. John was surprised when he saw her face.
How did you find out where we live? I'll explain everything properly, so please go home for today.
John was telling her, acting suspiciously. At this point, it was my elder brother's turn to intervene.
Huh? Did you forget my wife's face? This is the second matter we need to discuss.
Upon hearing that, the color drained from my husband's face.
What? Huh? You mean she is?
It appeared my husband was unaware that she was my brother's wife. Upon realizing this, he tried to make a run for it, but he seemed unable to move.
Seems like my wife is pregnant with your child. Did you guys do something to get pregnant?
My brother said, throwing down the copied evidence of the affair on the table.
Well, what's your next move? For me, it's divorce. Nothing less.
Upon hearing this, Molly, seemingly scared of getting caught up in this mess, said,
I will pack my things and go back to my parents' house.
And tried to escape upstairs. But my younger brother promptly told Molly,
We've got a truck loaded with boxes. Start packing your things right now. I'll get the boxes.
And walked out. Molly asked,
Am I leaving today?
But when she saw my brother glaring at her, she seemed to give in.
Well, my wife and John can sort this out. First, sign the divorce papers.
He told his wife to sign the divorce papers and handed them to her along with a pen. Seeing that the custody section of the divorce papers was assigned to my brother instead of her, she hesitated, but he said,
That's what the kids want. Your opinion doesn't matter.
She signed the divorce papers with tears streaming down her face.
Next time, take care of the child in your belly. I won't ask you for child support. In return, don't you ever show your face to my kids unless they want. I won't stop them if they want to see you when they grow up.
Upon hearing this, she apologized to my brother on her knees. I didn't miss the tears welling up in my brother's eyes. I realized how hard it had been for him. Next, it was my turn.
So, and what are you going to do?
When asked this, I said,
I choose divorce too. I want him out of my house as soon as possible.
Then, my husband dropped to his knees and began to apologize to me.
I don't want a divorce. Please forgive me. I beg you. Besides, it could be his child, not mine.
But when my brother said,
I'm good with 2 kids. I've had surgery to make sure I can't have any more.
John went speechless. My brother handed me the blank divorce papers.
If you want him out right away with Molly, why don't you have him sign?
I told my husband to sign it. And he signed on it. Maybe he gave up or wanted to escape this place with Molly. I handed my husband 2 pledge documents that my lawyer had prepared for me. One was for John and the other for Molly to pledge they'd pay for the damage they made in the house. It will roughly be $30,000 total, I suspect. And it also states that they never enter my house again in the future. John looked at my brother and me as if he wanted to say some complaint, but when my brother glared at him, he reluctantly signed the pledge documents. My husband, shoulders slumped, tried to go upstairs to pack his things for moving, but my brother said,
Oh, I got a marriage license for you guys when I got the divorce papers.
And handed his wife the marriage license. She immediately signed it and said,
John, sign it quickly. You've messed up my life, so you have to take responsibility. I'm having this baby. You can't escape.
With her crazed look. My husband signed it, crying and saying, Just do whatever you want. Finally, my brother yelled,
Hey, you won't say anything unless I ask, huh? Don't you have anything to say to me?
My husband finally apologized to my brother, almost scraping his head on the floor. After that, we all hastily packed my husband's and Molly's belongings into boxes and loaded them onto the truck that had arrived, and took them to their parents' house. With that, my brief married life came to an end. I'm going to live alone in this big house, I thought, but my mother offered to sell her house and move in with my younger brother. And it seems my elder brother, too, is going to sell his house and move in with his 3 children. My mother and my brother are going to buy this house from me with the money they get from selling their houses, telling me,
Why not build a new house when you get married next time?
But I keep saying, I'm good with an apartment. We got a dog that the kids had always wanted to have. Although in this house we had some bad memories, we are living a life full of laughter and happiness. My ex-husband reportedly married my ex-sister-in-law half a year later and is living with her at his parents' house. My ex-husband seems to be working day and night to pay for the damage of the house. And Molly treated her new sister-in-law like a maid. Sister-in-law lost her mental balance. Molly's mother couldn't stand to see her like that and kicked Molly out of the house. Molly asked my ex-husband for help, but he blamed her, saying,
If you hadn't moved in, we'd still be living in that mansion.
Molly ended up isolated, with no one on her side.